Before the darkness, there was hope. But what happens when hope fades? This is the story of a man on the edge, and the moment that changed everything. The darkness in the room pressed down on his chest, a suffocating blanket woven from despair. It was a tangible weight, a physical manifestation of the burden he carried within. The silence amplified it, making the darkness feel even more profound, more inescapable, making each breath a conscious effort, a monumental task. His lungs felt constricted, as if an invisible hand were squeezing the air from them. Each inhale was a victory, each exhale a surrender to the crushing weight. He wondered if the next breath would even come. He lay on the floor, the frayed carpet barely softening the cold, hard wood. The chill seeped into his bones, mirroring the coldness that had taken root in his soul. There was no comfort to be found, only the unyielding reality of his situation. The floor was his anchor, holding him captive in this desolate space. The silence was deafening, filled with every regret and failure, each one echoing in the hollow chambers of his heart. It was a cacophony of unspoken words, of missed opportunities, of paths not taken. The weight of these unfulfilled dreams pressed down on him, suffocating him more than the darkness itself. He had forgotten warmth, laughter, and peace. They were distant memories, flickering like dying embers in the vast darkness of his mind. He tried to grasp them, to rekindle their flame, but they slipped through his fingers like sand, leaving him with nothing but the bitter taste of what once was. The shadow had followed him for years, whispering lies of worthlessness and isolation, poisoning his mind with doubt and despair. It had become his constant companion, a malevolent presence that reveled in his suffering. He knew its voice intimately, the insidious whispers that chipped away at his self-worth. He had fought it once, with every ounce of strength he possessed, but now only resignation remained. The fight had been long and arduous, and he was weary, broken. The shadow had worn him down, leaving him with nothing but the hollow shell of his former self. The world outside moved on, oblivious to his suffering, but in this room, time had stopped. The clock on the wall remained frozen, its hands stuck in a perpetual state of stagnation, mirroring the stagnation of his own life. The world continued its vibrant dance, while he remained trapped in this silent, desolate prison. Memories of light and hope were faded like old photographs bleached by the sun, unreachable, lost in the mists of time. They were ghosts of a happier past, taunting him with the promise of what could have been. He longed to return to that time, to bask in the warmth of those forgotten days, but the path back was shrouded in darkness. All that was left was to lie there and let the silence consume him, to surrender to the darkness and allow it to envelop him completely. He closed his eyes, waiting for the inevitable, for the moment when the silence would finally claim him, and he would cease to exist. His mind replayed its cruelest memories, the hospital room, his mother's frail hand, his broken promise, the final silence, the cemetery, grief crashing over him, leaving him adrift and anchorless, the eviction notice, humiliation, pity, and the loss of home, the bottle, once a comfort, now a prison, deepening his despair. Each memory was a weight, each mistake another chain. He had tried to numb the pain, but it only grew. The world felt cold and indifferent, and he was utterly alone. Addiction and regret had built walls he could not escape. On the cold, unforgiving floor of his prison cell, he lay defeated. The weight of his choices, the crushing reality of his situation, pressed down on him like a physical burden. Each breath was a struggle, each moment a reminder of his isolation. Despair was the only companion he had left. It clung to him like a shadow, whispering doubts and fears into his weary mind. Hope had long since abandoned him, leaving behind only the bitter taste of regret and the gnawing emptiness of despair. But even in the deepest darkness, a flicker of light can sometimes penetrate. In the suffocating silence of his despair, a childhood memory surfaced, unbidden and unexpected. It was a faint echo from a life he had almost forgotten. A name spoken with reverence and love in a Sunday school classroom long ago. A simple story, a gentle voice, a promise of something more. He remembered the feeling of safety, the naive belief in a power greater than himself, a name that promised hope, a beacon in the storm, a lifeline thrown to a drowning soul. It was a name he hadn't thought of in years, a name he had actively pushed away. He had dismissed it for years, considered it a childish fantasy, a crutch for the weak. He had sought answers in other places, in power, in control, in the fleeting pleasures of the world, but now, stripped bare and with nothing left to cling to, it returned to him, a persistent whisper in the darkness. The memory of that name, that promise, offered a glimmer of possibility. He had tried everything else, exhausted every option, pursued every avenue, and failed miserably. His strength was gone, his resources depleted, his spirit broken. At the end of himself, with no fight left, he surrendered to the memory. He let go of his pride, his cynicism, his carefully constructed defenses. With his last ounce of will, with a strength he didn't know he possessed, he focused his mind and formed a word, a single, trembling syllable. It was not a shout of defiance, not a desperate plea for help, not a demand for justice. It was something far more vulnerable, far more intimate. Just a whisper, barely audible above the pounding of his heart, a fragile sound in the vast emptiness, the name he had forgotten, the promise he had rejected, now his only hope, his last resort, his only chance. He whispered it into the oppressive darkness, into the deafening silence, into the very heart of his despair. Jesus! The word hung in the air, fragile but defiant, a tiny spark of light in the overwhelming darkness, a testament to the enduring power of hope, even in the face of utter despair. For a moment, nothing changed. Then a subtle shift, a breath, a tear, a crack in the darkness. Invisible chains began to break, regret and shame losing their grip. The weight on his chest lifted piece by piece. He wept, not from despair, but from release. The gloom receded, replaced by a quiet stillness. A gentle breeze, a sense of grace swept through the room. He felt a flicker of light, small but real. The name he whispered had been heard. He was still in the dark, but no longer alone. The weight of despair had held him captive for so long, each day a battle against the darkness, but something shifted, a tiny ember refusing to be extinguished. Slowly, with trembling limbs and a monumental effort, he pushed himself up, each movement a victory, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. It was a struggle against gravity, against the inertia of hopelessness, but he persevered. The room, once a suffocating tomb filled with shadows and echoes of yesterday, was no longer a prison, but a starting point, a blank canvas upon which a new life could be painted. It was a place to begin again. He walked tentatively to the door, drawn by the faintest flicker of hope, a beacon in the overwhelming darkness. It was a pull, gentle but persistent. Outside, sunlight, a warm and gentle embrace, kissed his face, chasing away the lingering chill of despair. It was a promise of something new, a fresh start, a chance to rewrite his story. The world seemed to breathe with possibility. He wandered aimlessly, his feet carrying him forward until he saw a church, a simple structure with an unassuming presence. Its doors open wide, light spilling out like a golden invitation, beckoning him closer. Shame whispered insidious lies, telling him he didn't belong, that he was unworthy of such grace. But grace, a stronger, more persistent voice, urged him forward, whispering of forgiveness and redemption. He took a deep breath and stepped inside, enveloped by the warm, comforting light. The journey was just beginning, a long and winding road ahead, sparked by a whisper in the dark, a promise of hope in the face of despair. There is power in the name of Jesus, a power that transcends darkness and despair. He still hears the cries of the brokenhearted, still answers with unwavering love and compassion, still makes all things new, offering redemption and a future filled with hope.